Is it a planet or not? Pluto is one of the most recent big bodies being discovered in our solar system, and yet the most speculated about what is it. Now we call it a dwarf planet in a Kuiper Belt, in a ring of bodies beyond the orbit of the last known planet of our solar system, Neptune. It is the 10th most massive known object that orbits our Sun, and we know now that it's a binary planet system. Long-term information about the Pluto, which was discovered in 1930, was very poor. Since recent discovery of this planet in 1930 till recent times, we have very sparse information about this planet. We basically didn't know much about it. We knew enough since 1990s to recategorize this planet as the not 9th planet of our solar system to the one of the dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt. Since we started using the sophisticated telescope in 90s, such as the Hubble. However, we still had very poor images of Pluto, and we needed to discover more about this planet. Since 2015, the new discovery research, we have so much information about this planet now that we have more questions now about Pluto and its sister planets in the Kuiper Belt than we knew before. Let's in this video talk about Pluto, how it was discovered, what we knew before 2015 New Horizon research, and then how our understanding changed of the Kuiper Belt planets, dwarf planets, since then. Previous videos about Uranus and Neptune, we talked about the discovery of these outermost planets in our solar system. And we know that the Neptune was the first planet to be discovered using mathematical calculations due to its effect on the orbit of Uranus. See my videos about Uranus and Neptune. In the later years, especially in the beginning of the 20th century, there was a new observation of the Neptune orbit. And astronomers were not happy with that either. It sparked a lot of interest in searching for the planet X, possible 9th planet in our solar system. You can imagine how enthusiastic all the astronomers and the star lovers around the Earth started searching for this supposedly planet which affecting the Neptune orbit. In 1906, one of the wealthy Bostonian founded the observatory in his name, Percival Lowell, in Arizona. And he started searching for this possible planet which affected the Neptune orbit. In collaboration with some mathematician in 1909, they figured out the possible coordinates for this planet X. An amazing private observatory of Lowell started this research. Lowell observation was based on photographing the sky, and apparently he discovered 15 years before the final discovery of the Pluto this planet already on its photograph, but he wasn't aware of it. In the later years, the young researcher Clyde Tombaugh, he was only 23, was assigned to locate the planet X. Then going through all of these images and examine each of the pair of the photograph and see if any of the objects have shifted on the sky. He was basically using the manual work to do so. I was astonished how detailed the work should be and systematic. In February of 1930, after about a year of searching, he discovered a possible moving object on photograph, taking about 2 or 3 images to help him to confirm the movement of the object. And in March, the Harvard College Observatory got the message from them about this shift. It was 1930. They saw the tiny spot of light moving slowly against a fixed pattern of stars in the constellation Gemini. It was a fascinating discovery. The Pluto was named after the mythological god of the underworld who was able to render himself invisible. There's a very intriguing story how the name was given. We couldn't call this planet Planet X. It's not appropriate. It's not very nice for our ears, and scientists will never agree for that. Who knows how many other planets will be discovered on the sky. Plus, we have nice tradition to call the planets after the Greek or Roman gods. There were several suggestions: Zeus, Kronos, Lowell after the observatory owner, or Minerva. The widow of the Lowell liked Zeus, but later somebody suggested Percival after his name, and finally Constance after her name. In the same times, other suggestions will come in, and the researchers will swap with a number of names. However, one name everybody liked the most. 11 years old, Venetia Burney of Oxford suggested a Pluto, the Greek god of the underworld. He was the brother of Jupiter, Neptune and Juno, and third son of Saturn. He was one god who, when he wished, could become invisible. And thus the both Astronomical Societies of America and UK adopted the name Pluto. And they even adopted the sign, which resemble the P, Pluto, but also the Lowell's monogram. You can imagine that this planet was very significant for American society. We know that at that time the character in the Disney cartoons, the dog Pluto, was called after the planet. And even today, almost 100 years past the discovery, in several states of the United States of America, people are convinced that this is still the 9th planet of our solar system. They cannot accept that it's been shifted, moved to the category of dwarf planets of Kuiper Belt, because they want to keep this honor for United States to be one of the nations that discovered the planet. The first discovery of this scale for the United States. So let's talk about how this planet, 9th planet of our solar system, become not anymore. It's all happening in the second half of the 20th century, in particular for 1992, with our sophisticated telescopes to discover new bodies in our solar system. In particular, in the Kuiper Belt. And the Kuiper Belt was also discovered and named and categorized at that time too. From 1992 onward, many bodies were discovered orbiting in the same volume as Pluto, showing that Pluto is a part of a population of objects called the Kuiper Belt. Therefore, it's become controversial, can we call the Pluto the 9th planet, and many start questioning if the Pluto should be separated from its surrounding population. Gradually, some of the museums or planetariums start discarding the Pluto from the models of the solar system. And already in 2000, in New York, in a Hayden planetarium, the solar system was shown with 8 planets. There's also a number of asteroids was discovered, like Ceres, Pallas, Juno, Vesta. They were in size very close to the Pluto, and they'll be orbiting in a similar where the Pluto is. In 2005, astronomers announced discovery of new trans-Neptune object Eris, and that was the start of the end of the Pluto as the planet. The Eris was more massive than Pluto, and he was the most massive object that had been discovered in the solar system since Triton in 1846. Somebody called it 10th planet. Nobody can decide it could be called planet or not. Since then, the astronomical community decided to reclassify the Pluto as a minor planet. In August 2006, there was a meeting, and the official term of the planet was requalified. According to this resolution, 3 conditions must be met if you can call the object of the solar system as a planet. So the first one, the object must be orbiting around the Sun, and the Pluto does orbiting around the Sun. The object must be massive enough to be rounded by its own gravity. We call it hydrostatic equilibrium, when its own gravity shall pull it into a shape. And so far, as much as we know, the Pluto could be one of the objects that met this criteria. But the last, very important part of this resolution says that this object must have cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. And we clearly see this is not what's happening with the Pluto. First of all, Pluto is not a circle like for the other planets, and he actually transits the Neptune orbit sometimes in a year. Its combined mass is much smaller than the object in its orbit. And after that, the Pluto was decided to called Dwarf Planet. Since then, the many planets that called like that, including Pluto, Eris, Dysnomia, and people even created the minor planets catalog, and since then we discovered much more of those. However, there's still resistance and acceptance of this fact that the Pluto, the majestic Pluto had been discovered in 1930 by American society, are not the 9th planet of our solar system. And since 2015, New Horizons discoveries about the Pluto, we have much more information about this dwarf planet. Here you can see the comparison with Pluto with other dwarf planets, sisters. Pluto has its own satellites, and some other objects have some too. To name a few, Eris, Haumea, Makemake, Gongong, War, Sedna, Orcus, Salacia, and so on. And you see in comparison the sizes of our planet Earth and the Moon. Therefore now, if somebody asks you, is a Pluto a planet or not? Is it a 9th planet in our solar system? You can say yes and no. Pluto is the planet, but it's a dwarf planet. And if we categorize the planets as those that dwarf planets, there are much more than 9 in our solar system. But if you're just talking about the main planets of our solar system, which affecting the orbit and dominating that, it will be only 8. So let's have a look what we knew before the New Horizons and since then about this planet Pluto and its system, neighborhood, and its sisters dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt. Now, why are we actually doing this research? Because New Horizons might seem like unnecessary, expensive mission to do when we don't know so much about our neighborhood. So why go to Pluto? If we look in the solar system in our today's understanding, usually astronomers categorize their 3 zones: the inner planets, rocky planets, which we know, including Mercury, Venus, our planet, and Mars; gas giant planets, those big monsters like Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And after that, beyond that, there's a wide zone of Kuiper Belt. And I talked about this in my previous video about the Kuiper Belt. Check it out. Pluto is the largest body of the icy 3rd zone. In the early 2000s, the National Academy of Science placed the exploration of the 3rd zone in general and Pluto Charon or Charon, its biggest satellite in particular, among in highest priority. So among all the planetary missions since 2000s, in the next decade, we declared that the planetary missions studying these Kuiper Belt planets will be prioritized. And the New Horizons NASA mission will fulfill these objectives. And according to the zones, we categorize these three types of planets: the rocky planets, made of rock and metal. Then we have these icy giants, they're mostly gases and ice giants. And we have these icy dwarf planets. And they populated Kuiper Belt, and sometimes they fly into the second zone or closer to us. It's the most distant zone and the least studied, of course. We can find here ice dwarf planets and rocky and gas giant planets. And there are much more ice dwarf planets there. So what are the ice dwarfs? It's the planetary embryos, you can call them like that. And the growth and development stopped in size up to 2,000 to 2,500 kilometers across. They're much smaller than the planets in the inner two zones that we know. So therefore they become kind of like ancient relicts that formed over 4 billion years ago. And they're those bodies from which our main planets been formed, big planets been formed in our solar system. Therefore it's amazing to study them, and it will give us more information about the planetary formation and evolution of our solar system. However, we discovered that Pluto is not actually just a normal planet with satellites like others. Pluto is the binary planet, Pluto, Charon or Charon, his biggest satellite. It's the largest moon, half size of the Pluto, and the Charon not moving around Pluto, like for example our moon moving around the Earth, but they both moving around some point, gravitational balance point, in between them. We observed a lot of those binary planets or stars in our galaxy. They're quite common. For example, in constellation Ursa Major we have two stars which are the binary, so they're rotating around the gravity point around each other. Kind of like when you're dancing with somebody holding the hands and you start rotating around the middle point between you two. And you can actually see those two stars if you have very good vision without even binocular. And it's because we don't have this case in our solar system which we studied with our equipment or spacecraft. The New Horizon is the first explorer that studied the binary planet system ever in the history of human exploration. What else we need to study the Kuiper Belt? Well, we're going to study those cometary impactors on Earth, which happened in the past and might come to us in the future. For example, one of those supposedly come from the Kuiper Belt and destroyed dinosaurs 65 million years ago. I talked about this in my video about Don't Look Up movie. Check it out. But New Horizons will not just study the Pluto system, it will continue moving further, wide it can, wide its battery lasts, and it can send information to us on Earth. So we'll continue moving through the Kuiper Belt as far as it can, outside of our solar system, and study all the impactors on the way, so we can catalog them. Therefore, it's make New Horizons a historic mission. And it's first this type of sorts mission since the Voyager launches more than now 40 years ago or more. The New Horizon was launched in January 19 in 2006 and took more than 9 years to reach the Pluto. That's how far it is. In July 2015, it's flyby the Pluto and send us a lot of information about this binary planet system. Because it's so far and the spacecraft is quite small, the information arriving to us more than 2 years. We're still receiving information while it's moving, and researchers publishing new discoveries every year. We find out about the Pluto, something that we didn't know before. Before we just see its images, and that's it. we didn't even know what's happening with the Charon and the Pluto. We studied well its other satellites, with the 5 big ones, and we learned a great deal about geology of this planet, about its material, and maybe about its history. But we'll talk about this in the next video. I hope I have interest and information about the history of the Pluto, why it's not a planet anymore, or it is, why it's been expelled as a primary planet of our solar system, why it's become dwarf planet, what are the dwarf planets, and what is the role of Kuiper Belt for our planets in our solar system. In the next video we'll talk about the discoveries of new horizons, and we discuss in detail and see the images, amazing images of Pluto and its satellites. But meanwhile, subscribe, share this video, and I will see you in my next videos.